In 2001, Jurassic Park III crowned Spinosaurus as the ultimate land predator, crushing T-Rex and rewriting every childhood dinosaur ranking overnight. Museums rushed to match the myth, pouring millions into towering displays of a creature we thought we knew. But by 2024, scientists realized the entire story was upside down. The real Spinosaurus had legs too weak to stand, bones built for swimming, and a body that never stalked the land. Yet museums across Chicago, London, and Washington still display the impossible version, teaching a fantasy millions now mistake for fact. So why did the scientific truth get buried beneath concrete and million-dollar pride, and just how wrong have we all been? And yes, the movie lied. The moment Spinosaurus broke T-Rex's neck in Jurassic Park III, everything changed. That one scene did not just shock moviegoers, it rewrote the dinosaur hierarchy for an entire generation. Spinosaurus, 49 feet long, weighing as much as 7 tons, with a sail taller than most grown men and jaws lined with conical teeth, bulldozed its way into pop culture overnight. The film's box office haul soared past $360 million, and within weeks, search engines lit up with people hungry to know more about this new apex predator. Spinosaurus became a household name, second only to T-Rex. For millions, that movie was the first and last word on what Spinosaurus was: a monster that could outrun a jeep, stalk through thick jungle, and crush the king of dinosaurs without breaking a sweat. Museums took the hint. Across Chicago, London, Washington, and beyond, they scrambled to fill their halls with towering Spinosaurus skeletons posed in mid-stride, jaws agape, ready to hunt. Labels boasted of the largest land predator ever discovered, a beast that made T-Rex look like yesterday's news. But the real story was not just about a dinosaur, it was about how a single Hollywood moment could burn an image so deep into our collective memory that even the world's top scientific institutions would spend millions trying to match it. The myth had taken root, and for the next 2 decades, no one questioned if it was even possible. But the evidence was missing, and the truth, as it turns out, was waiting to surface. In 1912, deep in Egypt's Bahariya oasis, German paleontologist Ernst Stromer and his team uncovered bones unlike anything seen before. The fragments, jaws lined with conical teeth, ribs, and a row of towering neural spines, hinted at a creature both massive and strange. Stromer spent years piecing together what little he had, eventually publishing his reconstruction in 1915. He described a giant predator, nearly 50 feet long, with a sail on its back that stretched taller than a man. The bones made their way to the Munich Paleontological Museum, where they became the pride of German paleontology. But the triumph was short-lived. In April 1944, as Allied bombs fell on Munich, the museum's basement vaults turned into an inferno. Flames consumed Stromer's Spinosaurus, along with every other Egyptian dinosaur he had brought to Europe. The only things left were his meticulous sketches, black and white photographs, and a handful of measurements. No casts, no backups, no second chances. Stromer, devastated, called it an irreplaceable loss in letters to colleagues, knowing that decades of work had vanished overnight. He died in 1952, his discoveries reduced to paper and memory. For nearly 70 years, paleontologists had nothing but Stromer's drawings and grainy photos to guide them. Every museum mount, every textbook illustration was forced to fill in the blanks, guessing at missing limbs and posture. Without the original bones, the world's image of Spinosaurus became a patchwork of speculation, shaped as much by hope as by evidence. Museum curators faced a blank slate and a million-dollar question. How do you build a dinosaur when all you have are sketches and a handful of measurements? In the 1990s and the 2000s, the answer was brute force and borrowed logic. At the Field Museum in Chicago, the Natural History Museum in London, and the National Geographic Museum in Washington, the process started with Stromer's old drawings. Technicians scaled up missing bones from T-Rex and other theropods, welded together massive steel armatures, and poured concrete anchors straight into the floors. Each skeleton became a permanent fixture, more architectural than educational. The price tag for these displays ran from $500,000 to $2 million, with the Field Museum's 2018 Spinosaurus exhibit reportedly costing $1.2 million. That budget covered more than just bones, it covered casting, mounting, exhibit design, and the kind of lighting that makes a skeleton look ready to leap off its pedestal. Once the steel was set and the dinosaur stood tall, there was no going back without jackhammers and months of construction. Museums did not just invest in fiberglass and steel, they invested in the story itself. Plaques called Spinosaurus the largest land predator ever, bigger and meaner than T-Rex, and visitors believed it because the institution said so. The confidence was absolute. But underneath the dramatic poses and million-dollar spotlights, every display was a gamble, a permanent bet placed on incomplete evidence. And as new fossils began to surface, that gamble was about to get very expensive. In 2014, the world of paleontology got a jolt from the Moroccan desert. Nizar Ibrahim and his team unearthed a collection of Spinosaurus bones that would upend a century of scientific certainty. These were not ordinary dinosaur fossils. They were dense, unusually thick, and unlike anything seen in other giant meat-eaters. CT scans revealed bones packed solid, with almost no hollow spaces. The numbers told the story, compactness values running as high as 0.9, putting Spinosaurus in the same league as hippos and penguins, not T-Rex or Allosaurus. For context, most land predators have lightweight, air-filled bones for speed and agility. Spinosaurus, by contrast, carried the kind of bone mass needed to stay submerged. Ibrahim's team did not just stumble on these features by chance. The discovery came after years of tracking fossils through Morocco's chem beds, sometimes buying back bones that had already slipped into the fossil trade. When the skeleton came together, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The ribs and limb bones were so solid that in some cross-sections, they looked more like marine mammal fossils than those of a dinosaur. The skull added another aquatic clue. Nostrils perched high on the snout like a crocodile's, perfect for breathing while the rest of the body stayed underwater. The legs, too, raised eyebrows. Compared to the massive torso and long, sail-topped spine, the hind limbs were stunted, short and sturdy, not built for sprinting or supporting a 7-ton giant on dry land. Ibrahim's measurements showed femurs barely a third the length of the body, with a thickness that suggested more of a paddle than a pillar. Even the feet hinted at a watery life, showing broad surfaces that might have supported webbing, better for pushing through river currents than pounding the ground. With each new scan and measurement, the old museum image of Spinosaurus as a towering land predator started to crumble. The dense bones, the crocodile-like snout, the squat legs, every detail pointed away from the Hollywood monster and towards something stranger. Instead of ruling the jungle, Spinosaurus was built to rule the river. But as the evidence piled up, one question loomed larger. If this dinosaur was so well adapted for water, what did that mean for everything we thought we knew about its movement? The answer would come from an even more surprising part of its anatomy, and it would only deepen the mystery. In 2020, a team led by Nizar Ibrahim returned from Morocco with a nearly complete Spinosaurus tail that ignited a firestorm in paleontology. Not just any tail, this one was a monster, stretching over 15 feet, bristling with tall blade-like spines and deep chevrons. For the first time, researchers could see the entire structure, not just fragments. The shape did not match any other giant predator. Instead of a stiff tapering rod like T-Rex or Allosaurus, Spinosaurus had a tail that flared out vertically, forming a broad, flexible paddle. The team did not stop at measurements and diagrams. They ran the numbers, using computer simulations and robotic models to test how the tail moved in water. The results were staggering. The tail could generate powerful side-to-side thrust, almost rivaling living crocodiles. Computational fluid dynamics showed the paddle tail achieved up to 75% of a crocodile's swimming efficiency, far above any known theropod. The numbers did not lie. This was an animal built to slice through river currents, not stomp across floodplains. The implications crashed through the old narrative like a tidal wave. For decades, paleontologists pictured Spinosaurus as a land-based monster, maybe dipping its toes in water to grab a fish or two. The 2020 tail discovery forced a hard reset. The deep, flexible tail was not a balancing pole for running. It was an engine, propelling a 7-ton predator forward with each sweeping stroke. The evidence was visible in the vertebrae themselves. Tall neural spines and robust chevrons formed a high-aspect fin, perfect for generating lateral thrust. When robotic tail prototypes were tested in water tanks, they produced strong pulses of forward motion, with thrust values that left other dinosaur tails in the dust. The old Hollywood image, a Spinosaurus striding upright and chasing prey, looked more and more like fantasy. The real animal was a river hunter, using its tail as a paddle to ambush fish and outswim rivals. This was the moment the semi-aquatic theory tipped into something more radical. If Spinosaurus could swim like a crocodile, what did that mean for its legs, its spine, its entire body plan? Paleontologists rushed to update models and arguments, and the debate exploded. One thing was certain: the tail had changed the game. And while museums clung to their million-dollar standing skeletons, the science raced ahead, daring anyone to keep up. By 2024, the last threads holding up the land predator myth snapped under the weight of hard numbers. A team of biomechanical specialists armed with every Spinosaurus fossil and digital scan available set out to answer the question museums had dodged for years: could this animal actually stand and walk on land? They did not just eyeball the skeleton, they built it in 3 dimensions, layer by layer, muscle by muscle, and then ran the numbers that decide life or collapse. The results were brutal. The femur to tibia ratio, a classic test of weight-bearing strength, clocked in at under 0.3, less than half what is seen in other giant theropods. That is a limb built for paddling, not for propping up 7 tons of flesh and bone. Volumetric modeling showed the center of gravity was not balanced over the hips like T-Rex or Allosaurus. Instead, it lurched forward, pulled by a massive trunk and heavy tail, tipping the whole animal toward the water. When researchers pushed the digital skeleton upright and loaded it with simulated weight, the leg bones failed the test. The stress on the joints soared past safe limits. No amount of muscle, no trick of posture could keep a full-grown Spinosaurus on its feet for more than a few steps before the legs would buckle. Even the vertebral column told the same story. Its horizontal orientation, reinforced for side-to-side motion, would have crumpled under the compression of a vertical stance. Every metric pointed to the same conclusion: Spinosaurus was not just awkward on land. It was mechanically locked out of the role museums and movies had given it. The only way this animal could move with confidence was in water, where its weight vanished and its body plan finally made sense. For institutions that had spent millions mounting Spinosaurus in heroic poses, the verdict hit hard. The real animal was a swimmer, not a walker, and every standing skeleton had become a monument to wishful thinking. But the story does not end with the science. Museums had a choice to make, and most chose the path of least resistance. Walk into the Field Museum today and you will find Spinosaurus towering over visitors, jaws wide, posture frozen in a land-stalking prowl. The skeleton is bolted to a steel armature, the entire mount cemented into the floor, an engineering project as much as a scientific statement. It is not just Chicago. London's Natural History Museum, the National Geographic Museum in Washington, and dozens more have their own Spinosaurus. Each locked in a pose the latest research says is impossible. The cost of these displays runs into the millions, but that is only part of the story. Once the steel is poured and the bones are fixed, the entire structure becomes almost untouchable. Dismantling would mean shutting down exhibit halls, hiring welders and crane operators, and risking damage to the mounts themselves. For most institutions, the idea of tearing out a centerpiece over new science is a non-starter. It is expensive, disruptive, and risky. So what do museums do when the facts change but the skeleton cannot? The standard response is to update the signage. At the Field Museum, staff added an iPad next to the Spinosaurus, looping a sleek animation of the dinosaur swimming through ancient rivers. A small plaque mentions recent research suggests aquatic adaptations, but the skeleton itself stands unchanged, still posed as the ultimate land predator. Visitor studies in museums across the country tell a consistent story. Most people spend less than a minute at a major skeleton, and less than 1 in 5 will read a digital label or interact with a touchscreen. The vast majority walk away with the visual impression burned in, the myth, not the update. Behind the scenes, paleontologists at these institutions admit the contradiction. Field Museum scientists told reporters that the mount is out of date, but changing it would mean justifying another $1 million investment to donors and boards. For now, the compromise is to let the old story stand tall, while the new science flickers quietly on a screen nearby. The gap between what is known and what is shown is not closing, it is growing. And as long as the skeletons remain, so does the legend. Today, millions see a Spinosaurus standing tall in museum halls, while the latest science says it belonged to the water, not the land. As exhibits lag behind research, we are reminded what we see is not always what we know. Science moves on, but the myth stands still. Next time you visit, question the story the bones are telling. What else might we still have wrong?